Anglo versus Eastern, how's saying? Yeah, that's basically it. That's basically it. In the continental and analytical divide, which is, by the way, just a Heidegger and autism divide of robots and computers and shit. No offense to anybody. That's all the divide is about. Guess what? The continental Heidegger is on the side of the East. There is an objective distinction between East and West. That's not Orientalism. There's an objective and material distinction between East and West. And it's the ontology of materialism. West is heaven. West is heaven, head. East is what? Body, matter. Right? You think I'm crazy? Gnosticism. You know what Gnosticism is? Gnosticism is what prevailed in the West because the West defined itself by defining itself and abstracting itself not only from the rest of humanity in the world, but from being itself. From being itself, the foreclosure of being. This is what defines the history of the West. Nothing I'm saying is controversial, by the way. Nothing I'm saying is controversial. The West defined itself on pure air, pure thin air. Pure spirit, as Marx put it in his critique of Hegel. Read Marx and you'll understand. And it stems from Christianity too. Read Marx's Jewish question. Everything I'm saying will make sense. Anglo being based on linear. Well, you know what he's talking about. Basically axiomatic thinking. That's what Anglo is about. Axiomatic systemic thinking. Yes. That is something that defines logicism. I can't fucking say it. Logicism. Whatever the fuck how you say that. This is Anglo. Logicism. Not logic, but logicism. The idea that logic itself premises reason. The Greeks at one point became Eastern because of the distinction with the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire. The Byzantines were the first manifestation of this idea of the East. The Byzantines were Eastern. What are you talking about, dude? The Greeks are, in a sense, Eastern now compared to the rest of Europe. So the East-West division changes according to context, but the primordial West is Anglo. The primordial West is England. The primordial East is Eurasia. Central Asia. This whole point is to reflect how absurd it is to argue on regional categories. Why is it absurd? It's not a regional category because the regions change. The regions change across history. So there's a more fundamental ontological argument is what I'm making. I'm not making some kind of box, as how you're trying to put it. Also, the East is what made the Western world 100% true, composerly. But they want to deny that too. Almost like Haas himself is falling victim to the autism box. How? Because I'm making reality intelligible? You know what intelligibility means? It means you're recognizing differences in reality. That's not an autism box, you fucking idiot. An autism box is when you're trying to premise those differences on the basis of predefined forms. That's why it's a box, you fucking moron. If I were to say, this is the definition of the Anglo, and this is the definition of the Easterner, and I was dogmatically applying it and premising it on that basis, you would be right. But I don't have that pre-existing definition. So I don't have an Anglo box. He needs to start by killing the Anglo in his own head. I'm influenced by some Anglos. I'm not fucking... Anglo is where it all began. That's where industrial modernity began. The first victims were the Anglos. Speak nothing of the Irish and the Scottish, but they were the first victims. So what are you talking about? This is a common... Let me explain this. This is a common shared curse of humanity. I'm not denying it. But as the rest of humanity is freeing itself from the Anglo curse, you Anglos need to stop trying to bring it back and enforcing it upon them. You should free yourself from your own curse. That's what I encourage you to do. Free yourself from the Anglo curse. I know we all have an Anglo curse. I did have an Anglo curse. I fought and overcame my Anglo curse. Okay? So you can do the same thing. You think everything outside of individualism is idealism. Because you think individuals are only materially real. Because you're an Anglo metaphysical substantialist. Anglos only think individuals are real. To them, society is an incorporeal abstraction. That's why Hegel said England never had a state. England didn't have a state, according to Hegel, because the English thought everyone was just an atom. Everyone was an individual substance. Because empirically speaking, you can only pin down individuals empirically. You can't pin down society or the social reality empirically. You can't measure it. It's incorporeal in that sense. Did you know that the East... So this is Europe. Western Europe is right here. This is Western Europe right here, right? Do you know how small this is in the fucking world? Do you know how fucking small that is? When you're saying Eastern philosophy, you're talking about all of this. All of this. So yes, I am more influenced by Eastern philosophy because all the East means is all of this. So what's Orientalist about that? The West is the one that defined itself against the rest of the world. The whole identity of the West was defined by being against who? The Muslims first. Then who? The Mongols and the Asians and the Russians. The whole identity of the West is negative. It's just based on defining itself against the rest of the fucking world. How the fuck isn't my philosophy going to be more Eastern oriented if I'm a human being who's interested in humanity as a whole and being as a whole? Of course it's going to be more Eastern. The East encompasses the great majority of all humanity. And according to this paradigm, even Africa is the East. Even in a sense, Latin America is the East. Everything outside of Western Europe is the East. Everything outside of Western Europe. Let's talk about Haas, including Australia and the East. Well, what about the Aborigines? They're actually the ones native to Australia. These Anglos just sailed a boat and landed on there. It doesn't mean that fucking territory belongs to them forever. It does, or permanent in all history and all tradition. No, it doesn't. Indigenous Australians have a dream. They have the dream time. The indigenous Australians, they have the concept of dream time. I'm interested in dream time. I learned from all these people. And I am fair to the West. I've already named all these Western people I'm influenced by. Heidegger, Lacan, Bataille, all these Western... Enlightenment. The Enlightenment began in the West. Modern philosophy began in the West. Hegel, Kant, all these people. Even Hume and all those people. Yes, they all came from the West. I'm giving them the credit where credit's due. But they're still in the minority compared to the rest of the world. So I'm being more than fair, okay? If anything, the West is being very overrepresented in my thinking. Too overrepresented. I should be name-dropping more Eastern philosophers I'm influenced by. This series needs to be proven. It doesn't need to be proven, actually, Anonymous, because the facts, empirically speaking, are not in dispute. When it comes to whether they're empirically observable, what we're talking about, it's not in dispute. Now, whether our way of describing it is the best way or the worst way, that is what's in dispute. But no one's going to deny Silicon Valley emerged in the 80s and the 90s. No one's going to deny that neoliberalism as a shift in history, some kind of identifiable historical shift, happened after the 1970s. No one's going to deny that financial derivatives became prominent in the primary means of profiteering after the neoliberal age and so on. No one's going to deny all of these things that we are identifying with decentralization and deterritorialization. It doesn't need to be proven empirically because there's nothing, empirically speaking, that's in dispute. All of this is out in the open. Whether these are the best concepts to describe those is what's in dispute. Stop being Anglo. I want to stop using that term, but that's what you're doing. Every type of relationship to reality we have, you're saying we have to premise by some empirical proof. That's ridiculous. That's like saying, in order to love your mother, you have to prove it empirically. You have to derive some empirical proof in order to have a feeling of love to your family or your whatever. It's so stupid, and it's an inhuman way of thinking. You don't have to premise every single position by some little factoid tidbit. That's a stupid and lazy way of thinking. Is demanding evidence and exemplification inherently Anglo? It fundamentally is when it is not called for. Yes, it is. When you're demanding evidence ex nihilo, when evidence is not even in dispute, empirically speaking, that is Anglo. Because you're trying to substitute critical thinking and critical engagement and using basic human thought for some kind of empirical guarantee that it is true independently of your own thinking. That's vulgar, that's lazy, and yes, it's Anglo. A party is not the amalgamation of different cults. This is an Anglo mentality because Anglos think the sovereign individual substance comes before the mass, whereas all of other humanity recognizes the mass comes first. What I mean by that is that a party is not the sum total of different atomic units of individuals. A party is a symbol first and foremost. It's a brand first and foremost. It's some kind of meaning made manifest in reality that animates the compulsion and investment and inspiration of millions of people. That's what a party is. You don't begin with individual sovereign substance. Argument. Does one piece of gold weighing 1 g cease to be gold when this is guys, I'm glad. This is literally what I say. So when I'm calling him an Anglo, metaphysical Anglo, do you know why I'm calling him a metaphysical Anglo now? Because he's reducing the social phenomena of a strike, right, to be the aggregate of 1 Gs. He thinks the only meaning of social objectivity is the aggregate of individual substances who are engaged in direct action. That was literally my argument, and he literally just confirmed he's an Anglo fucking retard who thinks the whole social objectivity is reducible to the sum total of individual substantial action. That's why you sell fucking newspapers on the side of the street individually on this direct corporeal level and don't fucking understand if you just get on the fucking internet effectively, you can reach millions of fucking people. And you call that idealism. Well, I guess idealism is what is actually real now. And what you're talking about is selling fucking newspapers on the road individually. You think everything outside of individualism is idealism. Because you think individuals are only materially real. Because you're an Anglo metaphysical substantialist. Anglos only think individuals are real. To them, society is an incorporeal abstraction. That's why Hegel said England never had a state. England didn't have a state, according to Hegel, because the English thought everyone was just an atom. Everyone was an individual substance, because empirically speaking, you can only pin down individuals empirically. You can't pin down society or the social reality empirically. You can't measure it. It's incorporeal in that sense. Don't you guys see that there's a change historical from Anglo to China now? There's different cycles after modernity, right? You had Spain, the Dutch, Portugal, not in order. Then England, right? Now we have America, which is kind of an extension of England. Now we're moving to China. So if I'm shitting on Anglo, man, it's because it's a type of curse, dogmatic curse of thought that is not up to date with the actual historical change we're experiencing. I want to clarify that. It's not like a racial thing, okay? I don't hate English people. There's a lot of based English people, okay? For me, Anglo is this type of empiricistic, you know what I'm saying, this dogmatism, these people who think they know what Marxism is and they just confuse it with Anglo-Saxon metaphysical dogmas and shit. There is a unique pathology of the passed down by the English ruling class. You got all these motherfuckers, right? From the Malthusians, the race scientists, to the, empiricists, Bertrand Russell, all those analytical, dogmatic people.